Las Vegas, 1972. Backstage at a crowded casino theater, Elvis Presley paused mid-stride. Just minutes earlier, a nervous schoolgirl had stepped off a small-town stage hundreds of miles away. By dawn, their paths would cross and one sentence from the king would change her entire life. If you believe one moment of kindness can rewrite a life, stay with me through this story. And if it moves you, share it with someone who still believes in heroes. The first sound wasn't music. It was a sharp squeal of feedback that made the whole gym wince. A girl barely 15 stood, frozen at the microphone. Her fingers shook against the neck of a school-issued guitar. The wood was scratched, strings dull, but it was the only guitar she had. It was late spring, mid-1970s, in a small southern town. The school gym smelled of floor wax and popcorn. Folding chairs scraped the floor as parents settled in, holding. Programs creased at the edges. A paper banner drooped across the stage. Talent Show, 1975. The girl shifted her weight, eyes darting toward the wings. A teacher gave her a nod. She took a breath, strummed once, and began to sing. The song was an Elvis ballad. Everyone in that gym knew it by heart. Her voice was soft, not polished, fragile, like a candle flickering. The first row of kids whispered. A few snickered. Someone in the back clapped in mock rhythm. Her cheeks flushed, but she pressed on. The microphone hissed faintly. Each word seemed to catch in her throat. On the high note, her voice cracked, sharp enough to draw another ripple of laughter. For a moment, her gaze dropped to the floor. Then something shifted. A teacher in the front row leaned forward, elbows on knees. He didn't laugh. He mouthed the words along with her, slow and steady, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. She clung to that small anchor. Her shoulders loosened. The next line rang a little stronger. The guitar buzzed as her picks scraped across the strings, but she found her rhythm. The crowd changed to. The whispering softened. The fake claps stopped. By the final verse, the gym had grown still. She reached the last note. It wavered, thin but determined. Then dash, silence, no roar of applause, no standing ovation, just silence. Her hands gripped the guitar tighter. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it in her ears. From the bleachers, a boy muttered loud enough for others to hear, "She's trying to be Elvis." The words cut. The girl blinked fast, holding back tears. She gave a small nod to the MC and walked off stage, head low. The guitar strap slipped against her shoulder as if it carried all the weight of her shame. But in that silence, something else was happening. A story was already beginning to take shape. The kind of story small towns carry farther than they realize. The kind of story that, within hours, would travel farther than anyone in that gym could imagine. The girl had no way of knowing that night. Her trembling performance, mocked by classmates, would soon be retold to someone who never missed a thing. Someone who wore a white jumpsuit that caught the light. The story didn't stay in the gym. By morning, it had slipped out into town like smoke at the corner diner. 2 waitresses refilled coffee cups and replayed the moment how the shy girl sang Elvis in front of everyone, voice cracking but never quitting. One of them laughed kindly, saying, "Took guts, didn't it?" By afternoon, a local DJ picked it up. His voice boomed across the airwaves. "Folks, you're not gonna believe this. Last night at the high school talent show, a schoolgirl got up with a beat-up guitar and tried to take on the king himself." He chuckled between tracks, spinning Elvis records as a playful soundtrack. Listeners called in, some teasing, some touched. "She didn't quit," one mother said. "That's something," The words traveled faster than the girl ever could. A cousin of a casino stagehand happened to be driving through town that day. He caught the broadcast. Later that night, in a smoky Las Vegas hallway filled with clattering dice and slot machine bells, he repeated the story. A kid, barely a teenager, sang Elvis in front of her whole school, got laughed at, kept singing. Anyway, that's how it reached the right ears. Backstage at the Hilton, Elvis was finishing rehearsal. The band packed up, brass horns still buzzing faintly. He wiped sweat from his brow with a white towel when someone mentioned the story. "Some girl in Texas sang your song at a talent show," one voice said. "Didn't go over too well." Witnesses recall Elvis chuckling. His smile was brief, but his eyes narrowed with interest. "Where's she from?" he asked. No one had the exact name of the town, only fragments. But Elvis pressed. Someone scrawled it down. One witness swears it was on the back of a cocktail napkin. The conversation moved on, but Elvis stayed quiet for a moment, towel draped. Around his shoulders, lost in thought, he'd been that kid once, mocked for his clothes, his sound, his dream. He knew what it felt like to stand on a stage and hear laughter instead of applause. The room around him hummed with activity getter cases clicking shut, amplifiers buzzing, cigarette smoke curling in the light. But his focus was elsewhere. Finally, he turned to his manager. His voice was low, firm. "Bring her here," he said. "Tomorrow." The words stunned those who heard them. A teenager in a small town, plucked from a school gym and carried toward Las Vegas by nothing more than a whisper. It sounded impossible, but Elvis had spoken. And when Elvis gave an order like that, people moved. Open loop by the next sunrise. A phone would ring in that small southern town. A family would be told to pack their bags. The girl's life, once confined to a wooden gym stage, was about to step onto the edge of the king's world. The phone rang before breakfast. Her father picked up, suspicion heavy in his voice. A man introduced himself as part of Elvis Presley's team. The father frowned, covering the receiver. "Some jokers pulling our leg," he muttered. But the voice on the line was steady, professional. By noon, a courier knocked at their front door. In his hands, a sealed envelope with 2 plane tickets tucked inside. Destination Las Vegas. Departure dash tonight. The family stared at the tickets as if they were counterfeit bills. The girl clutched her guitar, whispering, "What if it's real?" Her father shook his head, still doubtful. But her mother pressed the tickets to her chest and said softly, "We're going." By dusk, they stood at the small-town airport. The air smelled of jet fuel and coffee from a vending machine. Fluorescent lights buzzed above worn linoleum floors. Travelers in plaid jackets glanced at the girl's guitar case. Curious, she hugged it close, like armor. On the tarmac, a silver jet gleamed under fading sunlight. The roar of engines vibrated through her shoes. A flight attendant smiled, guiding them up the narrow stairs. Inside, the cabin hummed with the steady hiss of air vents. They took their seats. The girl pressed her forehead to the window, watching the runway lights blur. Her hands trembled in her lap. She whispered, barely audible, "What if he laughs at me?" Her mother leaned close, answering with equal uncertainty. "What if he doesn't?" The engines thundered. The plane lifted, tilting them back into the sky. The ground fell away until their hometown shrank into a scatter of lights, then disappeared. For a moment, silence held just the drone of the engines and the rattle of trays. The girl imagined what waited in Las Vegas. Glittering lights, a stage big enough to swallow her whole. and a man whose voice had filled radios across the world. Then, turbulence, the cabin jolted. Drinks sloshed in their cups. A baby cried from 3 rows back. The girl's grip tightened on the armrest until her knuckles turned white. Every bump in the air felt like a test-each shudder daring her to turn back. But she didn't. She closed her eyes and pictured the gymnasium, the laughter, the silence that followed her final note. She promised herself, never again would she let the sound of others decide her worth. Hours crawled by. The plane finally descended, city lights sprawling. Across the desert like a glittering ocean. Neon signs blinked even from the sky. The girl pressed her face to the window, overwhelmed. When the wheels screeched against the runway, relief swept through the cabin. Passengers applauded softly. The girl exhaled for the first time in hours. The plane taxied. The doors opened. Heat rushed in from the Nevada night, carrying the smell of asphalt and gasoline. At the bottom of the stairs, a chauffeur in a dark suit held a placard. The letters were bold, simple, for Elvis. With her guitar still in her hands, the girl stepped into a night that would rewrite her life. The backstage door slammed shut with a metallic echo. The girl flinched. She had never heard a crowd like this. Thousands of voices crashing together in one long roar. The air vibrated with anticipation, every cheer rumbling through the concrete floor beneath her shoes. She clutched her guitar case tighter. Her palms were damp. The hall smelled of hairspray, leather jackets, and faint cigarette smoke that curled through the air vents. A stagehand walked briskly ahead, headset pressed to his ear. "Stay close," he muttered, but she could barely hear him over the thunder. Outside the curtain, they turned a corner. Suddenly, the light spilled across the floor, beams of gold and blue slanting through the cracks in the stage drapes. The sound of the band tuning was faint, brass and guitars buzzing in half-played chords. Then he appeared. Elvis Presley. He was taller than she imagined, shoulders broad beneath a white jumpsuit that caught the light like polished stone. The rhinestones reflected tiny sparks of color with each movement. A jeweled belt shimmered at his waist. He carried himself with an ease that silenced everything around him. For a moment, the girl couldn't breathe. Elvis glanced toward her, curious, then broke into a warm half-smile. He stepped closer, lowering himself until his eyes met hers at level. His voice was calm, gentle. "So you're the girl who sang my song." She swallowed hard and nodded. He reached for her guitar case without hesitation. His hands, strong, steady, opened the latches. He strummed once, letting the chord ring into the noisy hallway. The sound was rough, but Elvis nodded approvingly. "Show me," he said. The girl froze, eyes wide, but Elvis didn't move away. Instead, he gave her the faintest nod, almost daring her to try. Her hands trembled as she lifted the guitar strap. Over her shoulder, she strummed once, hesitant. Then she began to sing the same ballad she had sung in that school gym at first. Her voice wavered. Elvis tapped the rhythm on the guitar body, grounding her. He started to hum along, low and steady, carrying her forward. The crowd's roar seeped through the walls. But inside that hallway, it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Her voice steadied. She sang a stanza, eyes locked on. The king of rock and roll. Witnesses recall the moment vividly, how Elvis leaned in, listening as if nothing else mattered. How the room full of crew members went still, watching a trembling schoolgirl sing to the man who made the song famous. By the final line, her voice didn't shake. The last chord faded into the air. For a second, silence held. Even the hum of equipment seemed to hush. Then Elvis smiled, wide and genuine. He draped his arm gently around her shoulders, pulling her close in a way that told her she belonged here, at least for this moment. He leaned down, close enough that only she could hear. His words were quiet but firm, a whisper wrapped in certainty. Never let them laugh you off a stage again. Her eyes burned with tears. The crowd outside erupted into cheers as the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, calling Elvis to the stage. But for her, the moment was frozen, just his voice, just those words. Elvis rose to his full height, slipping the guitar back into its case with care. He placed his silk scarf around her shoulders, the fabric warm from his skin. "Hold on to that," he said softly. Then he turned, striding toward the curtain. A stagehand pulled it aside, and the roar of 18,000 fans surged like a tidal wave. The spotlights flared, blinding white against the smoke-filled air. Elvis stepped into it, arms wide, claiming the stage. The girl stood just behind the curtain, scarf clutched in her hands, heartbeat racing. She could still feel the weight of his words pressing against her chest. What he did next would not only stun the audience, but change the way she saw herself. Forever, the announcer's voice thundered. "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis Presley." The curtain lifted. The sound hit like a tidal wave, 18,000 fans, screaming, stomping, clapping. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks in the haze of cigarette smoke. But Elvis didn't launch into the opening number. Instead, he turned, slightly, glancing back toward the girl standing in the shadows. His silk scarf still draped around her shoulders. He raised a hand, palm open, and the band froze mid-chord. The crowd hushed, puzzled. Then Elvis reached back, gently taking the girl's hand. He stepped forward, pulling her into the light. Gasps rippled across the arena. The girl blinked against the blinding white beams of the spotlights. The heat from the stage lights pressed down on her skin. She felt the vibration of thousands of voices shifting in their seats, whispering, wondering who she was. Elvis leaned toward her, voice warm and steady. "Don't be afraid. You've already been brave once. That's why you're here." He lifted her hand high for the audience to see. His voice rang clear across the hall. "This girl has more courage than most of us." The crowd erupted. A roar of applause surged forward, sweeping her in sound so powerful she thought her knees might give way. She covered her face with her free hand, sobbing. The scarf caught her tears. Elvis steadied her, keeping her upright. He turned back to the band, nodding once. The drummer tapped a snare. The guitarist slid into the opening notes of the same ballad she had sung at her school. Elvis bent toward her. "Ears sing with me." Her chest tightened. "But when Elvis Presley asked you to sing, you didn't refuse." Her voice cracked on the first line. Elvis caught it, covering the stumble with his own. He sang low, letting her catch up. She found her pitch, steady now, echoing across the cavernous arena. Thousands of fans swayed. Lighters flickered like fireflies in the dark. Some wept openly. The girl sang one stanza, Elvis carrying her through the rest. When the final chord rang, the applause came like thunder. The sound shook the rafters. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, screaming her name, though they didn't even know it. Elvis slipped the guitar strap from his shoulder and draped it around hers. The instrument was warm, heavy, alive. He kissed her temple softly. A fatherly gesture, then looked back at the crowd. "You remember her?" he said firmly. She's proof that heart matters more than anything else. The audience erupted again. For the girl, the moment blurred spotlights, cheers. Elvis's hand holding hers high above the stage. She had never felt more seen, more believed in. The show went on. Elvis broke into his classics, the crowd roaring every lyric. But behind the curtain, she stood trembling, scarf and guitar pressed to her chest, trying to breathe through the storm of emotion. Later that night, after the final encore, the arena still buzzing, Elvis found her backstage once more. He crouched again, looking her square in the eyes. "Listen," he said. His tone carried no stage bravado, now just truth. "They'll laugh, they'll doubt you, but never let them chase you off a stage again. You hear me?" She nodded through tears. Elvis smiled, handing her a second scarf, this one still damp with sweat from the show. "Take this too, proof you belong." She hugged him quickly, almost afraid he'd disappear if she let go. His arms were strong, steady, fatherly. Witnesses recall that moment as quiet but powerful. No cameras, no reporters. Just a superstar reminding a frightened teenager that she mattered by dawn. She was on a plane back home. The scarf was tied around her neck, the guitar rested in her lap. She didn't sleep once, staring out the window at the desert fading into clouds. When she walked back into school, whispers followed. Some still laughed, others stared in disbelief. But she didn't bow her head anymore, because a week later, everything changed again. At the front office, a package arrived with her name on it. Teachers gathered as she opened it, hands shaking. Inside was a gleaming autographed guitar. Tucked under the strings, a folded note in Elvis's unmistakable handwriting. "Keep singing. You'll always have a front row seat, Elvis." Her knees nearly buckled. Students gasped. The principal wiped his eyes. Word spread through the entire school by the final bell. That guitar became her anchor. The scarf never left her room. And from that week on, she never doubted herself again, because one sentence from Elvis Presley had turned a frightened schoolgirl into someone who believed she could face any stage. Years passed, the scarf grew fragile, its edges fraying, the guitar strings dulled, replaced more than once. But neither item was ever tucked away. They stayed in plain sight, reminders of one night when kindness changed the course of a life. The girl grew into a woman. She didn't chase fame. Instead, she carried Elvis's words into classrooms filled with nervous kids gripping instruments of their own. She became a music teacher, her walls lined with posters and handwritten lyrics. And above her desk, framed carefully, hung the scarf and the note. Students whispered about it the first time they saw it. "Is that real?" they'd ask, pointing. She never bragged. She'd just nod, smile softly, and say, "He told me to keep singing, so I did." For her students, the story became more than memorabilia. It was proof that courage mattered more than polish. Many of them, shy and trembling, found their voices because she shared how she once trembled too. Neighbors remembered her differently than most. Not as a girl who once sang off-key, but as a woman who never missed another talent show, cheering louder than anyone for each kid who dared to step on stage. Safe phrasing. Some say she wore the scarf to every school performance, a quiet promise to the children that they were seen. Others recall she'd strum the gifted guitar once a year, just enough to keep its sound alive. Time carried her forward, as it always does. Hair turned silver, hands weathered. But even in later years, she spoke of Elvis not as a distant star, but as someone who believed in her when no one else did. And when her time finally came, the story didn't end. At her funeral, family members draped the scarf across her coffin. The guitar rested nearby, its wood gleaming under the soft church lights. Guests filed past, many with tears in their eyes. Some had been her students decades earlier, still carrying the lessons she gave them. It wasn't fame she left behind. It was faith that a single sentence could travel across a lifetime, because Elvis had once knelt, looked her in the eyes, and told her never to let laughter drive her from a stage. She listened, and in doing so, she passed that courage. To hundreds of others, her story proves something simple, something worth remembering. One act of kindness, spoken at the right moment, can echo longer than applause. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes a single act of kindness can change a life. And tell me in the comments, what's the one sentence that changed your life?